Hey, and welcome to the Stories Unveiled podcast, where we talk about the purpose in every story and how to live in freedom from your past. I'm your host, Ashley Sears, and each episode you're invited into a conversation about real life between me and a friend. I believe if an issue is addressed in the Bible, then it's important to create a safe and supportive space to discuss it. While some of these conversations are not easy, I do believe they are worth it. If you like what you hear, please visit our ministry at storiesunveiledconference.com. Thank you for joining today.
This episode is brought to you in part by Pure Desire Ministries. Lives and relationships are being destroyed by sexual brokenness, pornography, and betrayal trauma. Pure Desire believes you were designed to live a life without sexual brokenness and the effects it can have on your future. After working with men, women, and churches for over 20 years, Pure Desire has developed a comprehensive plan to breaking free, healing relationships, and getting your life back from sexual brokenness and betrayal trauma. Through recovery and healing groups, a clinical program, and partnerships, Pure Desire is helping the church effectively address unwanted sexual behaviors, betrayal trauma, and the impact of sexual brokenness. To join a group, start counseling, or get more information, go to figuratively.org. You can take your life back from sexual brokenness and betrayal trauma. Start your journey of healing today.
In today's episode, Amanda and I had an opportunity to sit down and chat about her experience walking through the wilderness, both literally and figuratively. We chat about her scary journey through being lost in the Owyhee Mountain range forest, and she gives us a glimpse into her thoughts and heart when she thought she couldn't go on. Amanda Rose is passionate about helping women develop awareness, confidence, and strength through lethal and non-lethal personal protection options. This includes helping women gain back their identity by providing tactical and firearms training, situational awareness training, and safety plans for self-defense. I hope this episode captivates you as much as it did me. Thanks for being here with me, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So before we dive in, I want to hear a little bit about you. I want to hear where you're from and what was it like growing up in your home?
Yeah, I'm from Long Island, New York. Okay. And I think when people hear Long Island, they immediately think of the Hamptons and all those TV shows. And I think even my first day at my adult job, somebody was like, "Oh, you must be from the Hamptons. Are you rich?" And I was like, "Excuse me, I wish." But no, it was, I grew up in a small little city near the beach, and it was more of what you would really imagine when you hear the word domestic violence. It was a very broken home and filled with a lot of abuse and pain. And I think back in the 90s, it was things that people didn't really talk about. And a small little city where everyone kind of knew everyone, but kind of just turned a blind eye to what was going on. There's a lot of crime and poverty and police officers at school all the time. And I think a lot of my upbringing is really what pushed me into the life that I created for myself.
Yeah. So tell me about school, high school primarily. How was that for you?
Oh, high school was tough. At that point in my life, I was really on my own raising myself. I didn't have parents in the picture. And I remember my freshman year, I was failing out of school. I was lucky if I even showed up at school. I kind of thought, I didn't have a family. I didn't know what that looked like. So I didn't think that I deserved a future. And I had a teacher that kind of took me under her wing, and she saw my potential. And it kind of gave me this hope that, all right, if I want a better future, I have to create it for myself. And I knew when I was like 12 that I wanted to work for the FBI or the CIA. Like, I think I saw that movie Spy Kids. I'm like, that would be so cool. And she was the first person to really believe in me and tell me I could do it. So by my 11th grade year, I had straight A's. I was in AP classes. I was a triathlete. I was president, vice president, treasurer of 7 different clubs. And by senior year, I'd gotten accepted into Penn State. I won homecoming queen. I just turned my life around. And that was when I really believed that there was a future for me.
That's amazing. So you graduate, you kind of have the world at your fingertips, but you decided to forego on Penn State. Is that correct?
I did.
And why is that?
Well, I got this brochure in the mail one day and it had this really cool obstacle course on it. And I was like, that's neat. How do I do that? And I called the number. It was for the military. So I went down and I talked to somebody on a Tuesday and I was like, how do I do this obstacle course? He's like, oh, well, you join the Army. And I was like, sign me up. And literally that Thursday, like 36 hours later, I swore in and I was like, I'll do it. And they're like, well, what job do you want? And I was like, I don't know, like how close to combat can I get to? And they're like, all right, military police. That was like all you could do as a woman at the time. And I dated this guy in high school. And he used to call me a girly girl all the time. He's like, well, you can't do that. You're too much of a girly girl. You never last in the military. You're too much of a girly girl. And I was like, I'll show you. Mm-hmm. So I did. And I joined when I was 17. And then I got my first deployment when I was 18, turning 19. And that was when I was supposed to start. So I deferred a year at Penn State. I deployed and I fell in love with the military. And that's all I wanted to do. So I never went back.
You never went back.
Yeah.
So you enlisted in the Army, you deployed, you were like full force in that. And then at some point you kind of went a different direction and you ended up becoming an agent with the CIA.
I did. So I knew that's what I wanted to do for my long-term plan. It was kind of like that pipe dream. And I'm like, oh, maybe one day I would get to do that. So all the decisions I had been making like through high school and my teens and early 20s was for that. I would ask myself, is this going to get me closer to that dream? So, I mean, I got a fake ID when I was 16, literally so I could go skydiving, not to drink, not to anything else. I wanted to go skydiving because I was like, well, if I'm going to be like a super cool secret spy agent, I need to know how to jump out of planes. So they I have this video and they call me Lisa. They're like, Lisa, what's up? And then I don't realize they're talking to me. And I'm like, oh, that's me. I'm Lisa. So I would
had a fake ID.
Because I had a fake ID and I gave it back to I gave it back to her and everything. I literally just used it to go skydiving. So I would do I learned how to ride motorcycles. I'm like, I have to do all these really cool things. So then I had this boss at the time and he was arrogant and he did not have a kind heart posture. Mm-hmm. He was not after God. And he told me if I didn't like working for him, then to go work for somebody else. And I was like, fine, I will, because I'm still from New York and I was sassy and 21 years old, 22. And I got on the CIA's website and I was like, I'll show you. And I just applied. It was emotional for sure. And then a year later they hired me. And I was like, is this for real?
Yeah.
So I was 22 and it was really, really awesome to tell him, hey, guess what? I'm going to work for somebody else. Oh, and by the way, it's the CIA.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So just as much as you can say, what was it like working for the government in that capacity?
Coming in as a woman in a really vulnerable time of my life and at such a young age, it was difficult. Mm. You have the best of the best, really in the country and the world recruited to protect our country. Mm-hmm. And when you have so many strong, intelligent alphas in this same, room, mm-hmm. it's cutthroat. Yeah. It's brutal. I loved the mission. I love what we do. I know it's super controversial and there's things that, people are entitled to their opinions and their beliefs. Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's about national security. Yeah. It's about protecting our country, protecting Americans so we can literally sit here and talk to each other right now. There were a lot of trials and tribulations with that. It grew me in ways I never expected. Mm-hmm. I was not a Christian when I joined, and I was surrounded by a lot of people that also were not Christians. Right. So with that, when you don't have God at the center of doing that kind of work, it breaks you in ways that are just unimaginable. Yeah.
Yeah. So your life kind of ended up taking a little bit of a different course because through a series of events and fast forwarding a little bit, you found Jesus. Mm-hmm. You stopped working for the government.
Yeah.
And you left the East Coast because you went from from New York to DC. Ultimately, you had to be in the Virginia, DC area.
Yeah.
And then you left that area and you continued to move west.
Yep.
And you ended up in Idaho.
I did. Good old Idaho.
Good old Idaho. Tell me about finding Jesus and the calling that he has on your life to use your story to help women through the business that you started called Athena Tactics. Yeah,
so it's really funny. I actually found Jesus through, shocker, an unhealthy relationship where I was dating a pastor's son. And Unfortunately, it was the epitome of somebody who, wolf dressed in sheep's clothes, where you could talk to the talk, but the walk wasn't there. And the worse the relationship got, the closer I grew to God. And it started off by thinking if I developed a relationship with God, then maybe, he would change. He would be different, right? Like I could change him, of course, which didn't happen. But the worse he got, I just started to fall more in love with Jesus. And I remember like the first moment of dropping to my knees and just giving my life over and praying and begging for like the pain and the hurt to stop. And I don't even think I really understood what I was asking for at that time. And that coincided with an assignment that I was working. And those people that I was working with, they actually were Christians. And I was judged pretty harshly for a little while for not having the relationship with Jesus that they had. Yeah. And I didn't get it. But I was afforded the opportunity to talk to those people and start asking those questions. And then it just grew from there. And I started to learn what living a life with God was like and what being saved was like. And when you come from such an extreme world of violence and evil without Jesus, and then you have that opportunity to just live a different walk, you truly see firsthand like how it changes your life. Like when you know what it's like to not have him and then have him, you can't ever go back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. So you came to a relationship with Jesus, and I know that there's probably some things that happened to lead you to this, but tell me about Athena Tactics. Tell me about kind of this calling that God put on your life that I believe at first you didn't really want to do. You didn't want to do it.
I didn't. So I'm not going to lie. God really had to humble me. Yeah. I had some pride. I was on my high horse. I had a very successful career. I loved what I did. I made great money. There are all these pieces to it. And I come to Idaho to kind of transition my life, settle down, get married, start a family, do the things that I never thought I would be able to do. And, when you grow up in a home filled with domestic violence and abuse, I think, there is that stigma that those people who grow up in that trauma will end up seeking it out again because it's kind of all you know. Yeah. And somehow inadvertently, as much as I didn't want to be that kind of woman and get myself back into those situations, I did. And it wasn't until I was able to have the courage to walk away from certain things and people in my life, I started to be surrounded by women who were coming to me asking me, how did I do it? How did I help myself?
Get out of this type of relationship?
How did I change things? And that was kind of simultaneous with a lot of my neighbors had moved here from California, love them, and they didn't have the advantages to shoot and learn firearms there.
Right.
So
Idaho is an area for that.
Yes, it's very Second Amendment friendly here.
Yes.
So I had these women coming to me, asking me questions. I mean, spilling their hearts out to me about these marriages and relationships that they had been in for 25 years and had never told anyone before. And seeking the abuse and seeking my guidance. And I was like, Lord, I'm not equipped for this. And I tried to be there for them, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life at the time. So it happened really simultaneous where I lost my career. I lost literally everything. My marriage, my house, my money, my retirement, all of it. It was like living my own little story of Job. My health was really bad at the time. And I could not get a job in Idaho. And I don't know if it was because of people seeing my career or having maybe a break in your career. I'm not sure. But I prayed a lot. And one day God just downloaded this vision. He was like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to help these women. And I said, Lord, I'm not equipped to help these women. How am I supposed to help them? Like, who am I to do this? And I pushed back a lot. And I said, no, I want to go do these other things. And I wanted to leave Idaho. I kept trying to move. He wouldn't open the doors. He said, no, I want you to do this. And I said, I don't want to teach guns. Like, I did that for all these years. I was heartbroken about giving up on my career. It was painful to kind of have one foot in and one foot out. And he just kept putting it on my heart. No, this is what I want you to do. And I said, well, how? And he said, I'll show you. And then he just started opening the doors, and Athena was born. It became more than just teaching women how to shoot firearms. It was, how can I equip women to protect themselves physically through lethal and non-lethal options, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? How can I equip women to protect themselves from societal threats? Where I'd realized I had all these years of training to protect my country, protect my community, do these things, protect against domestic violence. I had all the knowledge, and I still kept getting into it.
Yeah.
What about these women that don't have any training? They don't have any knowledge or any background. They can't see the signs. They need help. And so I grew Athena.
That's amazing. So tell me real fast what specifically you can do with Athena. Like, you train women on gun safety.
Yeah.
Do you help them get their concealed carry permit? Or take them through that training?
Yeah. What's so fun about it is just being able to leverage my skills. I can teach women almost anything, whether it's introducing to firearms. I love being able to just take that fear away and instill that confidence and give them the ability to say, oh, okay, like, guns don't have to be so scary. I can do this. Home defense, concealed carry, protecting their families, protecting their babies, situational awareness, taser training, active shooter, medical, trauma response.
I was going to say, it's not even just about guns. There's so many things that you can help for, like, situational awareness. And that's so important for women. We tell my kids all the time, keep your head on a swivel. Like,
exactly. And teaching your kids, bringing that awareness and that home defense into the home. And you don't need guns to do that. There's a lot of training and education you can get on just how to be prepared in your home and outside of your home, especially because nowadays women, they're out and about on their own. They're running around. They have the kids primarily, and we put a lot of emphasis on men to be the protectors, which they are, but men can't always be there.
Right.
Your husband
aren't always there.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to empower women to be able to protect themselves and their families, and to avoid becoming a target and becoming a victim, then, not taking that ownership for themselves.
That's amazing. I love it. So we're going to fast forward. So in September of this year, which is 2023, you were a vendor. Athena Tactics was a vendor at the Stories Unveiled conference that we had. And the day after that event, you were supposed to go on this, like, backpacking hiking trip into the mountains with some friends. The plan changed at the last minute, though, if I'm correct. And it turned into you and just one other person ending up going into, like, a day hike UTV trip. That plan to just do that and just kind of have fun for a handful of hours took a turn for the worse. Tell me about it all. Tell me about everything.
So I think it's important to set the stage that going into Stories Unveiled and going into that trip the next day, I had started a couple weeks prior a 40-day fast. I had felt at that point, coming into the fall, coming into September, October of 2023, that I was growing really distracted in my relationship from God, and something was just off. I just felt things stirring. So I decided to commit to these 40 days of eliminating certain distractions from my life, one of which was, like, dating and just going through an intense healing process of additional therapy to come out of the things that I had gone through. And this was the last week of my fast. And through those 40 days, everything changed for me. And when I say, like, the enemy attacked every part of my life, he did. And of course, right, because I was growing closer to God. So the end of it, now it was attacking my life. And I went out for the day. We were just going to the Owyhees. It was just supposed to be 3 or 4 hours. And that day...
The Owyhees, which is a mountain range, right?
Yep, the mountains in Idaho.
Okay.
I had felt called to go to the mountains. I remember telling my mom that morning, I'm like, I don't know. I just need to go. Like, I'm so stressed. Everything just seems like it's... crumbling around me. I just need to get away for a couple hours and, like, clear my head. And the mountains is where, I go for that. I love going to the mountains. She's like, I don't know. I have this bad feeling. I don't know that you should go. And I said, well, I know I need to do this. So I got with one of my friends. Everyone else had bailed for the day. I'm like, it's fine. It's only 3 or 4 hours. I pack everything that we need. I run through my PACE plan. My PACE plans, if there's an emergency, you have a primary, an alternative, a contingency, and an emergency, right?
Well, and it's also worth mentioning you're equipped for
I'm equipped for those
these things.
Yeah, in my mind, I am, right? So I actually felt like I was over-prepared for the day, and I'd gone through the checklist.
More than somebody like me.
Right, like multiple times, even like with my buddy that I went out with. It was just supposed to be a chill, casual day. And we go out, and what happened was, so I have an iPad, right, that has the map and everything on it. I plug it into my UTV, into the side-by-side.
Yeah.
You plug in your phone when you go to bed at night. Yeah. You don't wake up every hour to check your phone to make sure it's still charging.
Right.
That's a little silly.
Yeah.
Something's plugged in. You just kind of give it the benefit of the doubt that it's charging.
Yes.
So we're driving around and having a great time. Park somewhere to kind of walk around, take a little hike, look, get back in the UTV, start driving like the direction I knew we had to go. I had a general idea. And then I dive in to check a route, and I see that the iPad is only at 2%. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, whoa, why isn't this charging? So I start messing with everything. Come to find nothing's working. None of the electrical is working through the electronic devices for maps and everything. And immediately the iPad dies. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And we have no service on our phones. It was just one of those weird things where nothing would work when you have all the equipment necessary, but for some reason it just wouldn't work.
Right.
And they say, the enemy loves to mess with technology. So, okay.
Totally.
Try to turn around, try to go back the way we came. I swear it was like I drove into Narnia. I don't know what happened. I don't know where the trails went. Everything just changed. And I'm trying to get out, and I just keep turning around. Like, I just keep ending up at the same spot, and I'm like getting freaked. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. While this is happening, this intense level of fog rolls in.
Right.
I mean, so heavy, you can't see anything. We're soaked from the moisture.
Mm-hmm. A storm had rolled in earlier that day too.
Yeah, like as we had gotten out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was just like this series of everything like that I had planned for was just crashing. Like it wasn't going right. So fast forward a couple hours of really, trying to get out. It hadn't really hit me yet how bad it was. And now the sun's starting to come down. We can't see anything. Kept running into like water streams, going in creeks. End up getting stuck in some water, like in some rocks, because now it's getting muddy. Have to get out. We get soaked. That was a little silly, but you just do what you have to do. Our feet are soaked. Our clothes are soaked. This was October 1st, 2023 at this point.
Yeah.
It's freezing. The temperatures are dropping rapidly. And it's pitch dark. Again, we're just going nowhere fast.
Yeah.
Finally, it's like 11:30 at night.
And were you running out of gas?
We were running out of gas. I park at a spot, and I'm like, okay, we have 2 little bars of gas left. We're soaked. Mm-hmm. We've gone through what we have. We have the additional layers on that we have.
Right.
We were going so like south into the mountains, which would be going up in elevation somehow, that it was just getting colder and colder, right? The higher elevation, the colder it is. Mm-hmm. And I know people were like, didn't you use the stars or this or that? Like it's not that simple when you're in like back country.
Right.
We were not on trails anymore.
Right.
I told you, I don't know where the trails went.
Right.
They just disappeared.
You were just in the forest.
They were in the forest. So it's like 11:30 at night. My buddy that I was with lost his phone in the stream when we got stuck trying to get the UTV out. Now we have one phone that's on half battery left. I'm like, okay. I tried calling out, couldn't get out. I tried calling 911, couldn't get out. I did the SOS on your iPhone.
The SOS.
Yeah, it didn't work.
None of it was going
Thank
through.
you, Apple and Verizon. It said I had SOS. It didn't work. I had no service the entire time. Mm-hmm. So, you go somewhere and you have no service, then you get like a glimpse of service and you'll get like some kind of alert, right? The Bible app or the news or your sports team update, right? Yeah. Something will come through. I had nothing.
Yeah.
The last text message I had from my mother, who I share my location with, was, are you still in town? I checked your location. It hasn't updated. Did you leave your phone somewhere? So now I'm like, oh my gosh, now she doesn't even have my location.
Right.
Now what? I tell my friend, I think we just need to park. We're running out of gas. We don't have, many options left. Once my phone dies, we have absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. Let's just wait it out until sunrise. And, we agree, come up with our game plan. We're literally just parked in the middle of nowhere in the mountains with no gas, no layers, no heat, everything's soaked. No, you can't start a fire, right? All the things. And it was one of the longest nights of my life. I struggled emotionally, physically. My body would start convulsing from the cold. I would do like breathing exercises to try to stay calm. And somewhere around 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I did this intense prayer. I just told God I needed him to deliver very specific instructions to my mother. And I knew the only way that there was even the possibility of finding our way back was with help. Like we couldn't do it on our own. I knew the general area that we were in and how far away from everything that we were. I knew the amount of gas we had, the distance we had traveled. We didn't even have enough gas to make it back. Like I knew we would have to walk at some point. Mind you, our feet were soaked. We took our shoes and socks off, just for the health side, right? So trying to preserve our feet, which was terrible because it was so cold. My feet were frozen.
It's like, what's worse, cold, wet, or just cold? Yeah.
So that was painful. And I just asked him to tell my mom to call these very specific people, and this was where she was going to get the information. And at 2:57 in the morning, it turns out my mom calls 911. She calls police department. They give her the information for sheriffs. Then she goes into my computer. She tracks down a certain person's information that I had specifically asked her to call. It was one of my old bosses that I'd worked with that I knew the area out here really well, out in the mountains where I was. And then the chain effect of everyone under the sun. I mean, I feel like she just went through my contacts and called everyone and was like, Amanda's missing. Help find her and pray.
Yeah.
So she prayer warrior mode activated.
Yeah.
Fast forward in the middle of the night, I went through the highs and lows of the anxiety, the nausea, the fear of the likeliness of us finding our way back and finding our way out. There's a lot that went into that. There's a lot of the emotional side, the physical side that went into that. And I feel like I just prayed for 12 hours straight. Yeah. It was just this intense, fervent level of prayer and faithfulness where I was like, all right, God, this is up to you. And I knew in the morning I was going to need him to guide me. Fast forward somewhere between 5 and 7 in the morning, it really hit me hard. The fear of the magnitude of the situation. Well,
yeah, because it sounds silly. I mean, it doesn't sound silly, but I can only place myself in the situation. You were only supposed to be out for a few hours. And so you're like, okay, there's no way we're spending the night out here. This is not happening. I should be home. I should be in bed. And then you do, because you don't find your way out. And then you're spending the night, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the wilderness, nowhere. And I say spend the night, you probably didn't sleep, but
I was a little nervous, bears, coyotes, mountain lions. I had my gun with me. Thankfully, that gave me a little sense of peace, but
the reality is that you just spent overnight in the middle of nowhere with no service, and you are running out of gas. And what are the chances somebody's going to find you? If you can't even find your way out, how is somebody going to find you out there? Because you're not on trails anymore.
Right.
The heaviness of we might not survive this.
Yeah.
I mean, because at some point you need food.
Right. Food, and water. The temperatures were dropping. Like I said, there's now snow on the ground. We're moving colder into the season. We had everything against us.
Yeah.
And I had this little hope that I'm like, all right, in the morning, I'm going to walk right there to that spot and magically service is going to come on my phone, right? I was holding on to that.
Holding your phone up to the sky, hoping.
And that did not happen. I was like, all right, just need to hold out till sunrise. That was the longest night of my life. And it was different. When you come from the background that I come from and you're out in nothing, you have high level military government equipment. We have Blue Force trackers, which are these very just expensive pieces of equipment that can do the things that we need it to do, right? There's eyes in the sky. You have teams and people that know kind of where you are.
Always where you are.
I didn't have any of this. Was my first real life civilian. I wanted to be a civilian. I got to be a civilian, let me tell you.
Nobody was tracking you.
No one was tracking me. I'm like, everyone always knows where I am. This is weird. So fast forward a little more, the sun's coming up. I'm like, okay, just need to hold out. And I was breaking down. I was really, really scared. It was the first time in my life where I truly felt that deep level of, okay, I don't think I'm going home this time. and my body was giving up. I was weak. I was tired. I already have autoimmunity issues to begin with. So that didn't help. And I said this one last prayer. I just knew, I said out loud, my body's giving up. I could feel it like slowing down. And from, just the cold. Yeah. And I said, God, I need you to do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I have nothing left. I am just completely surrendering to you. And I knew the first thing I needed to do was put my cold foot in my freezing cold wet hiking boot. My socks had frozen over, so I'm like, can't wear those.
Right.
So just skin on that
in the boots.
In the boots. And I said, okay, if I could just do that, then we can move forward. And, so I do that and I come up with this game plan. I'm like, we're going to keep the UTV under 10 miles an hour. We're going to walk and recon what we can so we can make, good decisions. So finally we head out, and this is about 9:30 in the morning waiting. We needed enough sun to come up and enough fog to lift so I could at least get an idea where we were going. We almost drove off a cliff at one point, in that night. So I was already scared enough not being able to see. And for the next hour, like, we didn't say a word to each other. I think we were just silently panicking. But, there was prayer. I just kept talking to God while I was driving and asking him, I need you to guide me. I don't know where I am. I don't actually know where I'm going. I can't make an intelligent decision right now. And I just kept hitting wrong turn around here, no trail here, cliff here, unclimbable rock, everything. And I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm exhausting my options. Where am I supposed to go at this point? And then finally, I find a new trail somehow, and I'm like, all right, like the gas light's blinking at this point. I'm just going to commit to this trail. I was getting frustrated. I had moved into the acceptance stage, and it sounds like I gave up on God. I didn't. There's a level of having faith in and what he's going to do in your life. And then there's the acceptance of his plans for you.
Totally.
And I had gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm accepting that he's bringing me home to him. And this is the way it's going to happen. And I always said, well, when I go out, I hope it's doing something I love. And I love the mountains. So what better place, right? There was still that little fire in my heart that was like, but I'm going to fight and do everything I can. I don't care if it's my last breath, my last step. I will crawl my way back to my truck to go home.
Right.
So I'd moved into this acceptance where it was more like I was filled with this peace of, if this is my time, then okay. And I just completely surrendered. But I still kept praying. And I said, God, I need a biblical miracle. I remember driving. I remember the trail, the trees, I remember what everything looked like. I said, Lord, I need one of those. I need one of those miracles. I need, the type of miracles that you hear about when somebody has stage 4 cancer and the next day they go into the doctors and it's gone and it's cured and the doctors can't explain it. I knew I needed the magnitude of the unexplainable to happen. And then out of nowhere, somehow, like, the trail just breaks and it opens up and I see a little trailhead sign, and I got so excited because I knew, okay, at least we're on a legitimate trail. And my gas light was blinking. It had been blinking for a while. I also prayed for supernatural gas because I was like, I really don't want to walk. Just take me.
It's running on Jesus' power.
It really did. It really did. Lord, just please take me as far as we can possibly go. And it was a right and a left. I was at a Y intersection, and I sat there for a second because I knew this was the last decision I until we were going to be walking on foot.
Yeah.
It was either this way or this way. What am I going to do? And I just felt, okay, be still. And I'm trying to make the best decision. I knew I had to go north. I'm trying to use my last of my phone battery to make sure I'm navigating north. And it was about 30 seconds I sat there and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go this way. And I start trying to turn the UTV, kind of in reverse to turn the direction I wanted to go. And it was putting. And I'm like, come on, like, please don't die now. Please don't die now. And as I turn around, I see these 2 UTVs come up over the hill from the path that we had just driven from. And I couldn't believe it. It was like I broke and I see them. I start waving them down. And they drive up next to me and the guy comes up right next to me and I said, you've got to be kidding me. It's you. And he's like, hey. And I look at my buddy I'm with, and his name was Kyle, the person that I kept praying for that would come find us. And I look at my buddy.
The one that you wanted your mom to call.
The one that I wanted my mom to call. And I said, this is Kyle. And my buddy looks at me. He's like, are you kidding me? And I was like, nope. And he's like, are you okay? What do you need? I was like, socks. He's like, that's literally the only thing I don't have. And I was like, no. So, we park and they're there. This one of the search and rescue teams that came out, and they start siphoning gas into the UTV because we didn't have any gas. I thought I was going to lose the UTV. And I asked him, like, how did you find us? And he says, do you know where you are? And I'm like, no.
I thought I did.
If I knew that, don't you think I wouldn't be lost?
Yeah.
And he's like, you are so far away from anything. And I was like, yeah, I kind of gathered that from the direction that I traveled. And he said, we weren't even going to look here. This isn't even on like the search and rescue's radar. And he said, but your mom sent me a pin of your location from this spot. And I said, what do you mean? I said, I just got here like 30 seconds before you got here. And he was like, at 7:15. And I was like, this morning? I'm like, I wasn't here. He's like, no, yesterday. And I was like, last night? I'm like, no, I was not here. Like, I know where I was
then
at the night before. In this essence of like, I knew the area I was at. And I know that where I was at this point was not the same area, because I would have known that I would have seen the trail. Like it just would have been different. And the direction I traveled, the time, the distance, all these other factors. And I said, no, I haven't been here yet. And he said, well, this was the GPS location that pinged your mom's phone last night. It was the only thing that we had to go off of. So we decided to come out here. We'll check this spot. If you're here, great. If not, then we're heading back and we're going to go
in
to
the
all
places that we thought you were.
The other places. The sheriffs were somewhere else. One of my other girlfriends and her husband were heading to another area to look. Everyone kind of has their game plan. It took them about 2 hours from 2.5 hours to get from the parking spot to where we were at that point from a different route. And, and we're looking at it and he's like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I said, mind you, I never had service.
Right.
My mom's said that my location had never updated.
Yeah.
I didn't get a single update on my phone. Nobody else that I shared my location with, because I shared my location with a couple of people, got an update. Just my mom's phone at 7:15 the night before. How did my mom's phone get a location ping for a spot that I was going to be at the next day at this, that I navigated to randomly and got there within the same 30 seconds as the search and rescue team?
Yeah.
That didn't make sense to me. And I just kept trying to go over the details. I'm looking at the pictures and videos that I took in my phone the night before, because at 7:15 at night, I didn't understand the magnitude of my situation. I was still trying to make the best of it. So, you take pictures and stuff and it shows you, the video, the location I was at, not the same location. I'm checking the SOS emergencies that I'm sending out throughout the night, not this area. It didn't make sense. And even they said, the sheriffs and all of them had already realized when they got up there, the conditions were so bad, the cold, the fog, they couldn't see anything, that they actually needed to call the search and rescue teams off because it was too dangerous for them. And they knew that they're like, if we don't find them by sundown, like there's no way they're going to be able to survive another night out here with the conditions.
A second night, yeah. And
that was really the point that I had gotten to of realizing that. And, we start talking about it after, and they're, not the level of believers, that maybe I am, but we start talking about it a couple days. I go out and see their family, and people are asking about how they found us. And he literally said, I think it was God. Like nothing else makes sense. When you put all the pieces together, the search routes, where we were, the distance, I was 4.5 hours away from my truck. I just run out of gas, and I was trying to like rationalize it, and I just couldn't.
There's just no way.
There's no way.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you and your friend, you made it out. And like you had mentioned before, you said it's important to know that you were going into the week with your final week of this 40-day fast.
The fast.
Yeah. So you tell me about what happened. I think you said you had told me that it was at your women's group or Bible study or something.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about the significance of your 40-day fast and this incident.
So the days to follow, post the physical shock and the healing that my body had to go through, I had a moment where I broke down on the phone to my pastor. He's one of the first people I called. I'd gotten back that day when I made it home, And I didn't. It was so funny. We're driving and me and my buddy are like, all right, so we're not going to tell anyone about this, right? And he's like, no, never. I'm like, great, because, like, this isn't going to look very good. And he's like, nope, it stays with us, dies in the mountains. We're like, solid, right? Handshake on it. As soon as we get into town, we have service. I have like 47 text messages. And I was like, oh my goodness, are you okay? All this stuff. Everyone knows. My pastors are at my house. People are, like literally the village. That's right, prayer, the power of prayer.
Yeah.
So I take a couple of days, I process, I call my pastor, to thank him for coming over and supporting my mom. And I just broke down crying. And he says, one of the things that God is telling me, Amanda, right now is he wants you to read Psalm 46. And I'm like, okay, be still and know that I am God. A couple of days later, I go to my women's small group. They want to know what happened. I share my story. We open up to one of our random readings, and she says, Amanda, I did not plan this. And I'm like, what? And she starts reading Matthew 4 about how Jesus gets called up to the highest point of the highest mountain in the wilderness, right? And the enemy tries to tempt him through his 40 days of fasting.
At the end of his 40 days of fasting.
Yep. And we all just start crying. And then that leads into Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? So we start connecting these dots of me being on these 40 days. The obedience that I've gone through this last year, specifically in my relationship with God, making really difficult decisions just in all areas of my life to grow closer to him. And then this happens where I said I felt called to go to the mountains that day. I just knew I needed to go. Even though everyone else bailed, there was something in me saying, no, I just need to go. So I went. And what happens is I get called up to the highest point of the Owyhees, where I was. We were pretty much at most of the highest part of elevation, where it was the coldest, farthest away from everything, when they were like, do you know where you are? I'm like, right. No. And tempting my relationship with God, tempting that trust and faith that I had in him, that he's not going to save me. And those were the thoughts that the enemy was filling with my head. And then a couple days later, again, I open up my reading that Wednesday morning, and I somehow, this page in this book I'm reading, again, Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. And I felt so filled with the Holy Spirit. I just broke down crying, and I started talking to him, and I said, oh my gosh, I get it. I see it. Be still. When I was sitting there at that intersection, trying to decide, do I go right or left? And I didn't know which direction to go. And I said, I felt like, just be still. And then the search and rescue team showed up. It all just hit me. Every wrong turn I had made that morning, like that I was trying to find my way out, and I was getting so frustrated. And I'm like, why? Like, just why? I don't understand. Led up to that exact moment of the search and rescue team finding me. Had anything changed by 30 seconds, literally 30 seconds that morning, we would have missed each other, because I decided to go left. They were going to go right, turn around, do this loop, and head back out. I never would have come home. And They said it, the sheriffs said it, everyone had said it. We never would have found you, especially in that area that you were at, especially if you tried to walk. You were nowhere near anything. You wouldn't have made it. And I just start praying, so I start reading through Matthew 4 again and trying to make sense of this. And that's exactly what it felt like I had gone through. The enemy tried to break me in my fast. He didn't. He tried to break me in my health. He didn't. Then he calls me up to the wilderness, and I was literally lost in the wilderness, and God brought me out of it through something that we can't make sense of, and took me out of it, and he brought me home.
Yeah. For you to share the story of who he is.
Yeah. I suppose so.
That's amazing. So, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. I always end the podcast with the same question. And so I just want to kind of draw attention to the fact that there are people, in our lives that are walking through their own wilderness right now. So many are losing hope if they haven't already. They're praying for those biblical miracles, or they're just staying still and hoping for a rescue. What would you tell somebody that is maybe walking through that?
Oh gosh. I think just looking at this experience in itself, one of the things that I keep telling myself and reflecting back on really is Matthew 4.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my notes that I had written out from this is just talks about how like the devil will always try to throw off God's plans for us, his plans and purposes. God has a plan for your life. He does. And we have the free will to make the decisions that we have. We can choose to have faith in him. We can choose to honor him. We could choose to be obedient, or we could choose not to be. And through all of those temptations that the enemy throws at us, he will always try to deter us from God's plans and purposes for us. And through that, God will always use his evil intention for the good purpose of strengthening us the same way God called Jesus to the mountains, and he allowed Satan to tempt him because he wanted to strengthen Jesus in fulfilling his messianic role. God knew that through that test and through his faith of rebuking the enemy, it was going to prepare him and strengthen him for the plans and purposes that he had for Jesus, the same way he does for us every single day. And all of those wrong turns, every time we don't get that thing that we wanted or the thing that we're praying for, and we're like, but God, why? But God, why? No, but God.
Yeah.
He guides. He has those plans and purposes. And every time we make that wrong turn and we get frustrated and that failed relationship happens, or we get fired from that job, or something happens, it is all in his perfect timing. So when we're in that wilderness and we're taking all those wrong turns, we have to have that faith that he is bringing us exactly to that precise moment in time and location that he wants us to be at, that he will intercept and he will pick us up and he will hug us and he will save us and he will literally carry us out of the wilderness if we can surrender to him and trust in him and stay fervent in our faith.
I love it. Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate this conversation, and even though you made a pact to not share it, that you did. I appreciate it.
Now we're really sharing it. Oops.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's conversation on the Stories Unveiled podcast. We would love it if you would leave us a rating or a review. If you would like to learn more about Stories Unveiled and our events, go to storiesunveiledconference.com or follow us on Facebook or Instagram at storiesunveiled_. The Stories Unveiled podcast is created in partnership with KTSY and Barefoot Media Ministries. For more encouragement and other podcasts, visit ktsy.org. Have an incredible day and go live unveiled.